The kids. Oh, they're doing good? The doctors say his head is too big for his torso.
Jeff, you're on
I
air.
think I've heard. I'm sorry. Yes. Hello and welcome back. My name is Filbert Bumblebottom, and welcome to This Month in Pseudoscience, the show specifically designed to cover all of those topics throughout the month regarding pseudoscience that otherwise we wouldn't want to make just one single video about. We're going to get started tonight with actually some rather interesting and important news regarding the polio vaccine. More polio cases now caused by vaccine than wild virus. This is an interesting article. London. 4 African countries have reported new cases of polio linked to the oral vaccine. As global health numbers show, there are now more children being paralyzed by viruses originating in vaccines than in the wild. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, Filbert, it seems kind of odd that you would cover this story. Well, now, hold on just a moment. Let's get through this. In a report late last week, the World Health Organization and partners noted 9 new polio cases caused by the vaccine in Nigeria, Congo, Central African Republic, and Angola. 7 countries elsewhere in Africa have similar outbreaks and cases have been reported in Asia. Of the 2 countries where polio remains endemic, Afghanistan and Pakistan, vaccine-linked cases have been identified in Pakistan. Now keep in mind, what this says is there were 9 new polio cases, not necessarily the most alarming of figures, but still concerning. So let's understand what exactly is going on. In rare cases, the live virus in oral polio vaccine can mutate into a form capable of sparking new outbreaks. While the current vaccine-derived polio cases have been sparked by a type 2 virus contained in the vaccine. Type 2 wild virus was eliminated years ago. And the article then goes on to say how we have missed deadlines to eradicate polio, largely due to, well, unfortunately, a lack of funding and a lack of availability of a certain type of medicine. It goes on further to explain. To eradicate polio, more than 95% of a population needs to be immunized. WHO and partners have long relied on oral polio vaccines because they are cheap and can be easily administered, requiring only 2 drops per dose. Western countries use a more expensive injectable polio vaccine that contains an inactivated virus incapable of causing polio. Now, there are 2 ways to look at this story, and it's important that we examine them both. On one angle, we can see that there is a bit of a problem, albeit very minor, considering we vaccinate millions upon millions upon millions of children in the developing world with this oral polio vaccine. There is still the possibility that it can mutate and it can cause polio. And that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. And that is another reason why it would be great if we could have more funding to make sure the more expensive but much more safer vaccine is used in the developing world. Those of us who have the privilege of living in a nice Western country should have the forethought to try and make sure we're providing for the rest of the world if we have the capability to do so. To do any less is just simply, well, that's just inhuman. But the other way to look at this is that we've gotten so good at fighting polio that we managed to make it so cheap that at this point, there's only 2 countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan, that still have endemic polio. There's only 2. And otherwise, all these other places that it is more common that a very, very rare, extremely rare mutation happens and might cause polio than it would be found in the wild. That, in a very strange way, is kind of a success story. Next, we're going to switch gears and talk, unfortunately, a little bit about tragedy and chiropractic medicine. And just to put my usual disclaimer out there, I am well aware that there are such things as good chiropractors, ones that simply are working in a more therapeutic environment, a way of trying to alleviate symptoms. And to that, wonderful, fantastic. If you've got a chiropractor who works well for you, awesome. However, it is important that we understand risk, and we understand the limitations of chiropractic treatments. The family of a retired bank manager who suffered a broken neck during chiropractic treatment in England is urging the coroner to consider a verdict of unlawful killing in the case, while the chiropractor declared the incident rare and unusual. Chiropractor Arlene Schulten, 40, had been treating 80-year-old John Lawler at Chiropractic First in York on August of 2017 when he became like a rag doll, unresponsive and not able to feel his arms. Lawler was taken to York Hospital before being transferred to Leeds General Infirmary, where he died the next day. Police investigation into his death ruled out any criminal charges. However, that's not exactly how we determine whether there was some liability on the part of the chiropractor. Joan Lawler, John's husband, says they visited Schulten after he complained about pain in his back and legs, and they booked a series of appointments following an initial assessment by Schulten. Lawler says the first 2 appointments went well before they returned for a third on August 11th. She said his shoulders and back were out of line by gentle manipulation, she could make his life much happier. She started on the shoulders and went around his body. Then the table dropped and he shouted, "You're hurting me. You are hurting me. I can't feel my arms." Lawler says Schulten got John on a chair, but he wasn't moving or speaking. She performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on him until paramedics arrived. Now, the article also states that she used the drop technique. We do have a bit of a clip of a Dr. John Bergman using the drop technique, but this is on a very fragile young child, so brace yourselves. And now keep in mind, that was done to this 80-year-old man. Now, this story is a bit old. It happened back in 2017, but it's now that the investigation is really starting to ramp up, and it's good that it finally is. However, this is not an isolated incident either. You see, back in February of 2016, Katie May, a Playboy model, suffered a massive stroke due to chiropractic adjustment and then died later in the hospital. Now, these types of manipulations and injuries and deaths are very rare. I want to make sure that this is very, very clear. By no means am I raising the alarm that if you go to a chiropractor, they're going to break your neck or break your spine. However, it is important to understand that, like with any medical procedure at all, there is always some form of inherent risk involved. That's just how reality works. There's risk involved in crossing the street. There's risk involved in somebody deciding to do, well, this to you. Oh. And finally, we have this story. Thousands rally in D.C. for vaccine injury awareness. This happened on November 15th. This was also an event to show off the new movie Vaxxed 2, which I happened to see, and it's really, really terrible. But the only place I could find a somewhat decent article on this was the Epoch Times. Let's get started. Nearly 3,000 people attended a rally on the National Mall in Washington on Friday to bring attention to what they say is an epidemic of vaccine injury in America, an epidemic that is not getting either the medical or media attention it needs. The event, called the Vaccine Injury Epidemic Event, was organized by the nonprofit group Crazy Mothers. Founder Hillary Simpson told Epoch Times that she organized the event to bring doctors, lawyers, scientists, legislators, and mothers together to address the vaccine issue from every angle. I think when you have 53% of American children suffer from a chronic issue, you have to start to look at it, she told the Epoch Times. Well, and in this reporter's estimation, Crazy Mothers is a pretty good name for somebody who would claim that every chronic illness is somehow attached to vaccinations. And of course, never missing a beat for some really, really good publicity. You can tell that some of the usual leeches were there at the event. Event speakers included Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Del Bigtree, a journalist and producer of Vaxxed, and Dr. Andrew Wakefield, the director of Vaxxed. It doesn't mention that he's a disgraced former doctor, but that's okay. The event also included a screening of Vaxxed 2, a compilation of interviews with parents collected by the Vaxxed film team while on a screening tour for the first film. Now, the article author goes on to say that there was a bit of a problem. You see, the media just didn't want to cover the event, which is rather understandable, given these are baseless and unfounded accusations, and largely the spread of this type of information tends to attract very gullible people who then make poor choices and harm their children. But thankfully, I'm here to cover it. And as well, there was a person there protesting the anti-vaxxers who caught some interesting footage. A kind shout out to 42Believer, at 42Believer on Twitter, for going and protesting this event and capturing some of this footage. It's very hard to see, as tends to be the case with Periscope, but it doesn't quite look like 3,000 people in attendance to me. As somebody who has personally gone and had direct conversations with anti-vaxxers, I applaud your patience. And I applaud your efforts. Thank you very much. It is very much noticed. Go follow 42Believer on Twitter. Anyway, it appears it's going to be it for us this month. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any other hot tips for articles that otherwise wouldn't fit in just a single episode, but might do good for a once-a-month video, by all means, please submit them either to us on Twitter, to the Jeff Holiday subreddit over on Reddit. You can always send us an email. Links are in the description. And thank you very much for your support. We will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Nathan, what do they even do to treat a child that has too big of a head? Like, what do they even call it? Cranius maximus? Swolicus headicus? Like, he literally falls over because it's that big. It's that heavy. His head is that big. Do you have a picture?